Since I was little, I was taught to concede to my sister, Luna. So, when I caught her with Jackson, I chose to respect and bless them. Then, Jackson's brother Logan confessed his feelings to me. Luna and Jackson got all teary-eyed. They both wanted to take it back. Luna said she would give Jackson back to me, and Jackson begged for my forgiveness. This time, I told them to get lost. I booked a flight for New Year's Eve during the Christmas break and landed around 7 p.m. Planning to surprise Jackson, I didn't tell anyone about my trip. On my way home, I saw Luna holding Jackson's arm, resting her head on his shoulder. My surprise turned into shock. Luna reacted before Jackson. She clutched his arm tighter, hiding behind him with innocent, doe-like eyes. "Nancy, don't blame Jackson. I liked him first," she said as tears welled up in her eyes. When she cried, Jackson immediately reacted. He gently wiped away her tears and then looked at me, his nice features darkened. "Nancy, she's not at fault." I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. Jackson frowned and said, annoyed, "It's your attitude that made it hard for me to be honest with you. You have a prejudice against Luna." Wow, guilty without even a word from me. I looked at Jackson, feeling a strong sense of disconnect. It was like I never knew him. He clearly knew the conflicts between Luna and me, yet he tossed aside all the grievances I shared with him and sided with Luna. Not even having the strength to question, I forced a weak smile as warm tears slid down my cheeks. Jackson showed a hint of guilt, and Luna held his arm even tighter. He glanced at Luna uneasily and then turned back to me with a more resolute gaze, saying, "Nancy, I'm sorry. Luna needs my care more, but you can take care of yourself, right?" I glared at both of them, smiling sarcastically. "Fine, I wish you happiness." I used to think Jackson would always be on my side. He has a brother with a heart condition, and their parents are equally partial, making us bond over similar experiences. When I refused to give up my favorite doll, Luna cried, and our parents scolded me. So, I ran away to a nearby park and sat there from afternoon till dusk. By nightfall, Jackson found me. He had argued with his parents and planned to run away. Before leaving, he wanted to say goodbye to me but found that I had already run off. With no other choice, he came to find me first. "You're so inconsiderate, running away without telling me," he complained, puffing angrily. I lowered my head and started crying. I didn't really want to run away. I just wanted to scare my parents a bit, make them worried. Kids who aren't favored try to get their parents' attention in these ways. But what's the use? Seeing me cry, Jackson hurriedly wiped my tears, mumbling, "Stop crying, we'll call this off for now. Let's go home." He took my hand and walked me home, telling me not to leave without him again. My feelings for Jackson changed from that moment. Winter night's wind stung my face, drying my tears. I wandered aimlessly and found myself by the river. Bright city lights illuminated both sides of the riverbank, but only the sound of the flowing river accompanied me. I was alone with nowhere to go. I climbed onto the railing, leaning on it, staring blankly at the dark water below. A gust of wind messed up my long hair, and I freed a hand to brush it away. The railing felt a little loose, and as I shifted my weight, my footing slipped, pitching my upper body forward. My heart skipped a beat, and I felt a cold chill all over. I thought I was done for. Just then, I felt a force around my waist, steadying me. Turning with lingering fear, I saw a familiar face. "Nancy, was it necessary?" Logan shouted, his eyes red with anger. I was stunned, and he pulled me down from the railing, gasping heavily with a pale face. "Right, Logan has a heart condition, he can't be startled." Realizing this, I quickly patted his shoulder to calm him down, but he grabbed my wrist, his eyes red, demanding, "Is Jackson worth dying for?" Wait, he misunderstood something. Logan is Jackson's brother, and I always thought he was like Luna. Both with health issues, both favored by their parents, both polite and gentle around others. But unlike Luna, who embraces her pampered life, Logan strives to do better. He's the epitome of the ideal child, excelling in both academics and behavior, always top of his class. Compared to Logan, Jackson seemed average, thus their parents naturally favored Logan more. Since our families were business associates and lived in the same villa area, I was quite familiar with Logan through Jackson. But due to Jackson, I was always cold towards Logan. Whenever we met, he'd greet me first with a gentle, polite smile. Instead of acknowledging him, I'd either look away or give him a cold stare, but he never got upset. I had never seen him this emotional, eyes red and upset. But what did he mean by what he said? Did he think I was going to jump into the river? I explained seriously, Logan, it was an accident. I was scared too. Thank you for saving me. Really? He didn't seem convinced. I looked him in the eyes and nodded firmly. He still wasn't convinced, staring at me before asking, aren't you sad? I am, but not enough to die. Hearing what I said, Logan let out a long sigh of relief and hugged me tightly. That's great, so glad I made it in time. His voice was choked up, and his body was trembling. His sudden hug left me a bit disoriented. Maybe it was because of the cold weather, and plus, his health wasn't great, I thought. As the fireworks went off at midnight, Logan let go of me. I saw tears glistening in his eyes and felt a bit at a loss. Logan loved to smile, but there was always a faint trace of sadness in his eyes. I used to think it was because of his heart condition. People with heart issues are often unhappy, I guess, but I'd never seen him cry before. Was he scared by me? I awkwardly looked away, just as a purple firework blossomed in the sky across the river. I blurted out, Happy New Year, Logan. Logan gently ruffled my hair and spoke softly and melodiously, Nancy, Happy New Year. It's been forever since we saw each other. I wasn't sure why he suddenly said that since we'd seen each other during summer break. His sudden closeness made me feel awkward and stiff like a block of wood. I suddenly remembered his earlier question and curiously asked, Have you been following me all this time? No, Logan paused and smiled unnaturally. Okay, I just ran into you. Judging by his words and actions, he was probably around when I bumped into Jackson and the others. But do I really look like I'm that into Jackson? Did he seriously think I'd jump into the river over Jackson? Maybe everyone could tell that I liked Jackson. He probably wasn't blind, just chose to ignore it. I always thought we had a mutual understanding, but it turned out I was deluding myself the entire time. My nose tingled, and tears welled up in my eyes. Logan gently wiped the tears from my cheeks and pinched my face. He grinned, looking satisfied. Nancy, we're going to have new beginnings this year. I found him quite strange but couldn't pinpoint why. It was all so baffling, but I didn't mind. Wandering around in the bleakness of New Year's Eve, I didn't feel like going home. I booked a flight and planned to rest at a hotel for a bit before flying back to school in the morning. Logan booked a flight too. He said he had come home to take care of some things already and would head back to school with me. That's when I remembered that Logan and I were at the same school. We were only 3 years apart, but he was really outstanding. He had skipped several grades and was now working on his PhD, while I was just a freshman. As for Jackson, his test scores were so low that he didn't have many good university choices and had to repeat a year. We had planned that he would go to Canada too, but now he was likely to stay home for Luna. But none of that mattered to me anymore. Like Logan said, a new year, a new beginning. Logan and I went to a hotel, but it was fully booked for New Year's Eve, so we had to sleep on the streets. Talk about a rough start to the new year. Worried about Logan's health, I suggested going home instead. Logan just laughed it off. I'm not as fragile as you think. As long as you don't jump into the river, my heart can handle it. He smiled mischievously, like a sly fox. I couldn't help but pout and grumble. I already told you it was an accident. I don't want to die. I want to live well. Good, we both need to live well. Logan ruffled my hair again. I still wasn't used to such affectionate gestures and covered my head to stop him. We both went into a 24-hour convenience store and bought a bunch of food. We sat together, eating hot dogs, and picked a movie to watch. Logan and I had surprisingly similar tastes. He had seen every movie I'd seen. We finally settled on one we'd both seen before. Even though it was a rewatch, it didn't feel boring, and we had heated discussions about the plot. When Logan smiled, his eyes sparkled. I'd never seen him like this. In my memory, even though he always smiled, he seemed gloomy and dull. Jackson was the complete opposite, lively and straightforward, unable to hide his emotions. But that's just how it is. Even though Luna and I are twins, we're not alike at all. We look different, one takes after dad and the other after mom, and our personalities are totally different. The movie finished around 4 a.m. and Logan and I headed to the airport. Our flight was at 6 a.m. and we made it just in time. We got back to school around noon, just in time for lunch. All the traveling left me exhausted, and Logan didn't look too good either. We grabbed a quick bite at the cafeteria and then headed back to our dorms to sleep. Logan insisted on walking me back. I couldn't argue with him. Once we got to my dorm, I hurried him to go rest, and he asked for my contact info before leaving. When I woke up from my nap, it was already dark outside. I grabbed my phone and saw it was past 5 p.m. There were several missed calls, all from Jackson. My roommates had gone out to have fun, and I was alone in the dorm. A wave of loneliness washed over me, and I curled up under the covers, searching for some sense of security. I checked my phone, and Jackson had sent a bunch of messages. He explained that shortly after I left, Luna confessed her feelings to him. Initially, he didn't like Luna and didn't plan to tell me. Luna's school was near our home, a 20-minute drive, so she went home every day and saw Jackson often. With her gentle persistence, Jackson gradually fell for her. On Christmas, Jackson asked Luna to be his girlfriend, and they officially got together. Luna said she just wants to be with me. She's so good, I couldn't refuse her. No matter what conflicts you have with Luna, she's my girlfriend now. You can't badmouth her in front of me anymore. Nancy, there's no right or wrong in relationships. Luna doesn't owe you anything. Reading his messages, I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Seriously? Do I owe Luna something now? I replied, respect, best wishes. Then I blocked and deleted him in one go. Actually, I had a hunch about all this. Otherwise, I wouldn't have flown back for over 4 hours on New Year's Eve. When I started my college life, Jackson was busy with his repeat study year. Saying good morning and good night became our daily routine. I'd share what I saw and heard in college. He'd reply after his evening self-study. We'd chat a bit more on weekends, but he still had tutoring, so time was tight. Occasionally, my parents would call. It always ended up with them bringing up old stuff again. If you had listened to us and stayed nearby, you could come home every day. With your family's conditions, you don't need to chase a good degree. Now your sister's by herself at school, and we're worried. In the end, it was all because of Luna. But my life is not for serving Luna. So, every conversation ended up unpleasantly. One day, I shared my worries with Jackson. I thought he'd side with me like he used to. But surprisingly, he said, maybe they really care about you. Besides, Luna's situation is worrisome. He'd never said anything like that before. And he'd never called her Luna like that. I didn't ask why Jackson was acting so strange. I was afraid the answer would be hard to accept. After that, he became busier. We barely talked on weekends. The photos, songs, and fun stuff I shared were brushed off with a few words. He never called me first anymore. A relationship can change when a third person gets involved. Later, my intuition turned out right. Just after I blocked Jackson, he called. I didn't want to hear his nonsense, so I blocked his number too. Not long after, Luna called. If I hung up, my parents would definitely call to scold me. Reluctantly, I answered. I heard Jackson's angry voice. Nancy, enough already. Luna and I dating is a done deal. Nothing you do will change that. I laughed in anger and asked, what did I do? Didn't I wish you happiness? Luna's weak voice came through, Nancy, don't say things out of spite. So I repeated, I wish you both happiness. Satisfied? Why don't you spend more time doing practice tests and less on dating so you don't score so low after another year of study? Hitting a sore spot, Jackson spat furiously. Nancy, you're way too vicious. I misjudged you. With a calm voice, I replied, no, you just never really knew me. We've never been the same. Jackson tried to say more, but I hung up. I didn't answer again. At that moment, a message from Logan popped up. Are you awake? I booked a restaurant, let's go out and have dinner. I replied instantly, sure, I'll get ready. I put on some light makeup and dressed warmly. It was too cold. I couldn't bear it. When I got downstairs, Logan was already waiting. He had on a black down jacket and a white scarf. His nose was red from the cold. He must have been waiting a while. Seeing me, he asked if I was cold, then pulled out a pair of fluffy bunny gloves. I noticed you didn't have these yesterday, so I got a pair for you. Thanks. As I reached for them, he put them on me naturally. By the time I realized, he was already done and smiled at me. They fit perfectly. Let's go. The breath he exhaled spread out like fog. It seemed both real and unreal. He was right in front of me, yet I felt he might disappear if I reached out. I nodded dumbly, and he patted my head. The real touch dispelled my strange thoughts, and I felt a sense of calm. The Christmas holiday made the outside lively. Logan's restaurant reservation had quite a few people. The spot he booked had a view of the street at night, with bright lights and bustling crowds, full of city life. As we ate, Logan and I enjoyed the night scene, chatting and laughing. I never imagined before that I could get along with Logan so well. I never really understood Logan. From Jackson's description, Logan was arrogant and aloof, only pretending to be polite in front of others. I used to believe Logan was just a spoiled older brother who bullied his sibling. But how could someone truly cold follow me out of concern after seeing my embarrassing situation? Memories I'd buried surfaced in my mind. I asked Logan. Logan, remember that time Jackson and I ran away from home? Of course I remember, Logan nodded thoughtfully, then suddenly changed the topic. But it's kind of weird when you call me by my name. You should call me bro, like Jackson does. Right? The topic changed so quickly that I felt a bit awkward and couldn't get the words out. Seeing this, Logan didn't push me further. You can just call me Logan. This time, I responded quickly, okay, Logan. He suddenly burst into laughter, making me feel like he did it on purpose. Logan, still smiling, continued with the previous topic. Jackson runs away from home all the time. There are only a few places he goes, and the family knows them well. When they go to get him, a few kind words will coax him back home. Yeah, how could I forget? That time Jackson ran away and took me home, and as soon as we left the park, we ran into Logan and his parents. They coaxed Jackson back home with promises of letting him watch TV while eating dinner. That kind of tantrum-throwing Jackson, how could he possibly be the neglected child of biased parents? Logan never scolded Jackson harshly either. He always spoke kindly with him. I was too lonely. I wanted a companion, so I selectively ignored these things, believing Jackson and I were the same. Jackson and I were never the same. He got picked up by his family, while I would go home to get scolded by my parents. Weren't you in your room? Where did you run off to? You made your sister cry today and haven't apologized yet. Go apologize right now. They didn't even notice I wasn't home and forced me to apologize to Luna. Even after so long, thinking about these words still made my nose sting. Logan noticed I was in a bad mood and quietly placed a piece of strawberry cake in front of me. Softly, he said, "Eat something sweet, it'll make you feel better. I remember you like these too." I sniffled and looked up at him in confusion. As if he read my mind, he smiled and said naturally, "I used to see you eating candy all the time. When you'd come over to play with Jackson, you'd always prefer the strawberry cake that my mom made. I did love sweet things because they always made me feel better. Every time I felt bad, eating some candy or cake made things a lot better." And strawberry was my favorite flavor of all sweets. But my love for sweets left no tooth in good shape when I was a kid, and my parents banned me from eating them without sweets. When I felt aggrieved, I cried harder, confiding in Jackson. He'd complain about me being noisy, yet secretly brought sweets for me to eat. What's so good about these sweet things? You've got snot coming out from crying. Back then, Jackson was my savior, but he never understood why I loved sweets so much. Logan knew that sweets could lift my mood. Actually, after that time I went back home, my parents insisted I apologize to Luna. I refused, and my dad raised his hand to hit me. Right then, Logan appeared and said, "Uncle." My dad put his hand down, and Logan explained that I got home late because I was focused on helping Jackson with his summer homework. He then looked at my parents and curiously asked, "What did Nancy do that she needs to apologize to Luna?" Being the well-praised good kid and the older son they wanted to curry favor with, my parents gave Logan face. They brushed it off as a misunderstanding and didn't make me apologize to Luna anymore. Logan helped me out that time, but I was so prejudiced against him. I thought he was there to laugh at me. I glared at him fiercely, and he smiled back at me. That made me even more certain he was there to laugh at me. I stared at Logan and, out of nowhere, blurted out, "Logan, do you like me?" I regretted it as soon as the words left my mouth. Maybe he just pitied me, looking at me with compassion. I was wrong. Why did I have to be so disgusting? To my surprise, Logan didn't deny it. He hesitated for a moment, then nodded, "Yes, I do like you." His ears turned pink, and his deep eyes were full of affection. My face heated up quickly. I lowered my gaze to avoid his eyes, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw the rabbit gloves on my bag. I liked rabbits. My favorite toy as a kid was a rabbit. Every day, with a rabbit backpack, rabbit-printed skirts, and rabbit-shaped hair clips. Did Logan know this too? My heart pounded like a drum. I clasped my hands tightly, stammering a bit as I spoke. When did you start liking me? I don't remember exactly. At first, I just thought you were cute. Chubby and white. Didn't look too smart, but were unexpectedly good at studying. What? I snapped, looking up, interrupting Logan as he laughed again. Every time you had a stern face, it wasn't very serious. Like a little angry cat. No wonder he never got mad, always smiling. I huffed in annoyance. He reined in his smile a bit, speaking seriously, "Nancy, you are beautiful and cute. I have no reason not to like you." He said even having grown up in such an unfair family, I still turned out to be as excellent and beautiful as I am now. He admired and felt sorry for me. He always remembered how I would walk and recite books at the same time. You are not like Jackson. He grew up spoiled, probably still has the same brain size as when he was a kid. Reckless and indifferent. Don't put yourself in the same category as him's just an ugly toad in a pond, while you are a shining swan. He doesn't deserve your affection, but you deserve to be liked by everyone. Logan didn't hold back on criticizing Jackson. Now I kind of understood why Jackson said he was arrogant and aloof. An elder brother who excels in everything, occasionally has a sharp tongue towards me, and my parents don't care. Jackson, spoiled as he is, can't take this kind of treatment. Understanding everything now, I forced a smile that looked worse than crying. I was honestly laughable and pathetic. Laughable because I foolishly believed that buffoon Jackson, pathetic because I sought some sort of validation this way. Giving up on someone you've liked for a long time is so easy. I don't like Jackson at all anymore. But I also don't know how to face Logan standing in front of me. No one will ever like me as much as Logan does. Quietly watching over me, even when I misunderstood and disliked him, he never changed. I suddenly thought, is this how Jackson feels about Luna? Just thinking about it makes me inexplicably annoyed. I skipped this topic and talked about something else. I asked Logan what kind of music he likes. Even with such an awkward transition, he didn't point it out but continued the conversation. The atmosphere was strangely harmonious. Later, when he walked me back to the dormitory, we said goodnight, and as I was about to go in, he called after me. Nancy. In the pale moonlight, his eyes were deep like a pool, his emotions unreadable. We're friends getting to know each other again, right? If you ever need anything, just come to me anytime. This guy, first he says he likes me a lot, and now he says we're friends. Does he mean to start slowly from being friends? That doesn't sound too bad. I nodded. He smiled extra brightly and urged me to get into the dormitory. The wind is strong outside, go in quickly. Anyone who didn't know might think I was the one with a weak heart. You should head back too, don't stand in the wind. He nodded obediently. But before I went up the stairs, I looked back and saw him still standing there. Seeing me look back, he smiled and waved at me. I felt something stir inside my heart, then turned and quickly ran up the stairs. The next day, I got a call from my mom. Who knows what kind of complaint Luna made, but my mom started scolding me. How can you be so shameless? Stealing your sister's boyfriend. When I used to play with Jackson every day, my parents never stopped us. They were happy to see me close to Jackson. My family is wealthy, but Jackson's family is even wealthier. Our families have business dealings, so having the kids play well together was a good thing for my family. They once had high hopes for Luna, believing that gentle and well-behaved girls could win Logan's favor. But Luna was rejected by Logan countless times, and her pride couldn't take it. Gradually, she even became unwilling to interact with Jackson. I happened to play with Jackson a lot. In front of Jackson, my parents never showed their favoritism. Thanks to Jackson, I sometimes got a few kind looks from my parents too. Coincidentally, Jackson never saw me being mistreated, so it's understandable he believed Luna. Ha! I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh, which made my mom explode. Nancy, what kind of attitude is this? We don't expect you to help the family, but at least don't drag your sister down. Mom, I swear, I will never steal my sister's boyfriend. If I do, may I die a horrible death. My tone was calm and firm. There was a pause on the other end of the line before my dad's angry voice came through. Nancy, you're getting more and more disrespectful. Just because you're in college, you think you can act all high and mighty? Don't think just because your school is far from home, we can't control you. Keep this up, and I'll freeze all your bank cards. Always with this threat, just like when I insisted on applying to a school in the north. Anger and frustration weighed on my chest like a huge stone, making it hard to breathe. Go ahead and freeze them. Maybe then you'll be satisfied if I'm dead. The lump in my throat threatened to turn into a sob if I said another word. I ended the call quickly. I remember the day I got my university acceptance letter. My parents weren't even happy for me. Earlier, when I was selecting schools, we had a huge argument, and we were in a cold war since then. During dinner, Luna started talking to me. Nancy, congratulations on getting into your dream school. I'm so jealous, you've always been so excellent. She barely finished speaking before tears welled up in her eyes, as if she had suffered some great wrong. My parents couldn't bear to see her like this, their eyes filled with sympathy for her and blame for me. I kept my head down, eating silently, not planning to make any pointless explanations. Mom glared at me, snapping, "Can't you comfort Luna a little?" Finishing my last bite of food quickly, I put down my bowl and chopsticks, glanced at the tearful Luna. Sis, if you tried a little harder, you could get in too. My words seemed to pierce her. She stared at me, lips trembling and eyes filled with disbelief. I've given it my all, but... Her voice choked, and she began to cry. Dad banged the table and pointed at me, yelling, "Nancy, do you have any conscience? Luna could have been better than you if not for her poor health." He stopped, and Mom chimed in to help. "And now you're saying things to hurt her? Don't forget she's weak because of you." From childhood, Luna never needed to do anything. My parents would hand her everything she wanted. Everything I wanted, I had to fight for myself, even though my efforts would hurt Luna. When I was filling out college applications, they wanted me to apply to a local, average university in the same major as Luna, so I could take care of my frail sister. My grades easily guaranteed a spot in a prestigious university, yet I had to give up because of Luna. But why should I? I've asked myself this question countless times, but in the end, I always give in. But countless times of giving in never made my parents feel sorry for me. They would just praise me for being considerate. At that moment, I understood that they didn't actually like a well-behaved and excellent child. They only liked the one they had invested more time and effort into. The suppressed grievances exploded like a flood, pouring out with my tears. I cried out all my grievances over the years, loudly protesting their unreasonable arrangements. Luna cried too. She cuddled in Mom's arms, looking at me pitifully. "Nancy, I didn't know you hated me so much." My parents were full of disappointment. They questioned me, "Nancy, how can you be so inconsiderate?" But I never said I hated Luna, I was just fighting for myself. When it was time to go to school, Luna caught a cold. My parents rushed to take her to the hospital, completely ignoring me. Seeing me dragging a suitcase, they finally remembered that I had to go to school today. Holding Luna, my mom glanced at me hurriedly and frowned. "Your sister's not feeling well, we need to take her to the hospital. Let the driver take you to school." My dad impatiently said, "Why bother with her? She's an adult, she can take care of herself. Getting Luna to the hospital is the priority." They anxiously left with Luna, not sparing me another look. Maybe because I was used to their favoritism, I wasn't all that disappointed. I just stared dazedly at their backs, like a stray cat enviously watching a pet cat being held in someone's arms. In the end, it was Jackson who went with me to the airport. Before we parted, I looked up at him and said seriously, "Jackson, I'll wait for you." He nodded seriously, and I left feeling assured. Before getting on the plane, I opened my social media and the first thing I saw was a photo Luna posted. "Just a little cold, but Mom and Dad are so worried. With them around, I never have to grow up." The photo showed Luna getting in 4, with my parents' figures visible nearby. I liked the post, feeling a sudden pang in my nose and tears welling up. Remembering the past grievances, I sniffed. "I can't cry. I won't cry over these jerks anymore." Keeping a stern face, I called Logan. His gentle, reassuring voice came through, and I burst into tears. By the time Logan arrived, I had already stopped crying. But seeing his worried and concerned look, my eyes welled up again. He took me out of the school first and then to eat. He said I cried so loudly, I must have used up a lot of energy and must be hungry. Feeling wronged, I followed him to the hotel private room. After eating my fill, he asked me to tell him everything in detail. After understanding the whole situation, Logan's expression turned indescribable. "Don't worry about this. You can use my card from now on. This way, you won't be controlled by them. I can even support your PhD studies. Don't think of it as a burden, consider it a loan from me." Also, Logan's tone paused, his expression becoming particularly serious. "Never talk about death lightly. Always cherish your life." I mumbled, I was just speaking out of anger. "That's not acceptable." His tone suddenly became heavy. I was startled and just stared at him. "Sorry," he suddenly teared up, his voice softening. "Nancy, would you like me?" The humble yet slightly hopeful tone made my nose sting. I confidently told him, I would. Who wouldn't like such an excellent, wealthy, and handsome guy? Moreover, in this world, no one but him would ever like me so sincerely. As long as you like me a little, that's enough. Being together will be happy, and it won't be too hard when I leave. Logan touched his chest, showing a bitter smile. My time is limited, so I can't be too greedy. He looked fine, but he said he didn't have long to live. Logan told me every time he could make a wish, he wished to live healthily. For him, that's a luxury. He feared death, feared that one day he would just suddenly die, and he lived every day as if it could be his last. He did whatever he wanted and fought for whatever he desired. He loved Canada and came despite his parents' objections. But when it came to me, he hesitated. He watched me quietly, never approaching. Even when misunderstood, he didn't explain. Until he mistakenly thought I jumped into the river, he couldn't just stand by anymore. He couldn't stay rational, yet he turned to ask me to be rational. At the moment, I was fine, but no one had ever been so straightforward in affirming their feelings for me, liking me. How could I not be moved? Once the feeling of affection sprouts, it grows uncontrollably like wild grass, but seeing the eager look in Logan's eyes, all the words I wanted to say turned into one word, okay. He smiled with relief. Perhaps fearing I would compete with Luna for Jackson, my parents this time didn't just threaten me, they actually froze my cards. They waited for me to yield and apologize, but I stubbornly defied their expectations. I didn't use Logan's card. A long time ago, I started saving secretly. After I became an adult, I secretly opened my own card and saved up my pocket money and the living expenses they gave me. They froze the cards they gave me, but my own card remained unaffected. I had anticipated this day would come. After a while, my parents called. They believed I was just holding out stubbornly, or that I was borrowing money from someone to get by. My dad magnanimously ordered, "Just apologize to Luna, and we'll unfreeze your card." I told him, "I'm not wrong, and I won't apologize." My parents angrily scolded me for being ungrateful and said they'd let me suffer a bit more. I ignored them, hung up after they finished scolding. After the final exams, my roommates went home one by one, but I didn't want to go home. Logan suggested we go on a trip, and return a couple of days before New Year's. It seemed like he was well prepared, listing several destinations thoughtfully and sending me an itinerary. When I saw through him, he just smiled and admitted, "I've been planning this for a while. Along our route home, we can visit all these places." I accepted his suggestion. The next morning, the two of us headed to the train station after finalizing our plans. During the trip, Logan and I got along perfectly. He took care of all the planning, and I just followed his lead. Everything went smoothly. My family called a few times, and I told them everything honestly. Logan helped explain on the phone, and after a few moments of silence, my parents told me to stay safe and come home soon. Jackson called Logan with questions, but Logan hung up after a few sentences. 2 days before New Year's Eve, Logan and I arrived at the local train station. My parents, surprisingly, came to pick me up. They tried making small talk, but since we never really communicated well before, their sudden concern felt awkward. After an uncomfortable silence, they started asking Logan questions instead. Logan handled it smoothly, easing the awkwardness in the car. My mom even praised him. "Nancy has a lot of annoying habits, only someone as patient as you, Logan, could tolerate her. Auntie, you don't really know her. Nancy is the best and sweetest girl I've ever met. Maybe you should rethink whether you're being fair to her." Logan said this confidently, without batting an eye. My parents just chuckled awkwardly. After that, the conversation died down. When we got home, I noticed Luna giving me an unfriendly look. I ignored her and went straight to my room to rest. Later, she came to my room, wanting to talk. "Nancy, I can give Jackson back to you." I looked at her like she was crazy. Tired of him already? Luna probably never really liked Jackson. She just didn't want to see me happy. Growing up, she always took things I liked by crying to our parents, who would make me give in. Mom always said I took her nutrients in the womb, making her weak and sickly, and that I owed her for life. Even though she's long recovered, our parents continue to indulge her. Anything Luna wants, they take from me and give to her. She'd play with it for a few days, lose interest, but never return it. She loved flaunting their favoritism over me. But I'm not that little girl anymore. I sat down and looked at her with interest. "Nancy, the person I really like is Logan." She looked very serious. "I'll give Jackson back to you, just don't go near Logan." I smirked, "Not interested in Jackson. If you want Logan, go ahead and try." Her eyes reddened, and she stormed out. Luna probably cried to our parents because they gave me those looks again. At dinner, Dad spoke sternly. "Nancy, Luna confessed her true feelings to us. Emotions are hard to control, so don't blame her." "Yes," Mom added, "your sister is fragile, she can't be sad. Let her have this one last time." Luna sat by, teary-eyed and looking innocent. I calmly ate my food and said, I'm not stopping her from chasing true love. Logan and I aren't dating. They were stunned, and Luna asked in disbelief, really? He confessed to me, but we're just friends, I replied, seeing Luna's smile. Let's see how she plans to win Logan over. Later, Logan asked me out, and we bumped into Luna and Jackson, hand in hand. They quickly separated. Jackson frowned. Where are you two going? For a walk, Logan answered, taking my hand. Luna said eagerly, Logan, can we join? Logan ignored her and asked me gently, are you okay with that? I looked at Luna and slowly shook my head. After ditching them, Logan and I went to the riverbank. At midnight, fireworks lit up the sky. He asked my New Year's wish. Hope you stay healthy and safe. He pinched my cheek, thank you. On the 5th day of the new year, Logan and I left for another trip. After the holiday, we went straight back to school. Luna often probed me about my relationship with Logan. I always told her the truth, just friends. She then tried her luck with Logan, but he always brushed her off. With them not around, I didn't care about their drama. At school, I was enjoying life, frequently grabbing meals or catching movies with Logan. Although busy with his PhD, he always found time for me. Because I wanted to see you, he'd say with a straight face, ignoring my blushing cheeks. He often said things that made my heart race, but his sincerity made them feel genuine. I couldn't help but fall a little more for him each time. In my mind, I reassured myself, liking him a bit more wouldn't hurt. He seemed healthy, and I hoped he'd live a long life, meaning I could like him for a long time too. Time flew by at school. In early June, I got a call from an unknown number, an area code from home. I knew who it was without thinking. Nancy, my college entrance exams are soon. Remember our promise? Jackson's voice held a hint of hope. I didn't answer directly, instead asking, where's my sister? He hesitated, then said, after the exams, I'll clarify things with Luna. Nancy, you used to really like me, didn't you? I sneered, you know used to, yet you're still coming to me now? When he chose Luna, he stood against me. Before that, I could deceive myself, but his actions made me realize the truth. Nancy, give me a chance to make it up to you. I replied coldly, no need. Don't bother me again. I flat out refused, and then he switched topics. Can you wish me luck on my college entrance exams? I hope to get into a school in Canada, I blurted out. That's hard to say, but good luck. Nancy, without giving him a chance to speak again, I hung up and blocked his number. After the exams, he used a different number to add me. This time, I accepted. I sent him a recording of the conversation Luna and I had during the winter break. After a long time, he texted me back, I'm sorry. And then I didn't hear from him again. Luna broke up with Jackson and came to yell at me. Nancy, I really underestimated you. Are you happy now that I've broken up with Jackson? I shot back, weren't those words from your mouth? She lost it, yelling that I was shameless and accusing me of trying to date two guys. Who's the one trying to date two guys? Logan ignored her, and Jackson broke up with her, so now she's getting nothing from either side. I didn't plan to argue with her, she wasn't worth my time. Seeing that I stayed silent, she quickly left after cursing me a few more times. Soon, my mom called. As expected, it was about Luna. She blamed me for ruining Luna's love life, hurling all kinds of insults. I didn't argue back, just quietly listened. Are you dead since you won't answer? She shouted. I'm listening, I calmly replied. She seemed deflated, then tried to persuade me to talk to Jackson. I remained silent. After the call, I was still calm. Maybe I saw through it all, and those insults couldn't hurt me anymore. I never did anything wrong. They should be the ones feeling ashamed. When summer break started, Logan's uncle and aunt came to the school to pick him up. I went back with them. Even though Logan seemed fine, I had a nagging feeling of unease. A few days later, he invited me on a trip abroad, with his parents coming along. The whole thing seemed off. I asked him if something was wrong with his health. He dodged the question. It's always been an issue, don't worry. The more he avoided it, the more uneasy I felt, but I couldn't push further. I accepted his invitation. Luna found out and wanted to come too. My parents tried to negotiate with Logan's parents but were flatly refused. Now she looks at me with jealousy and resentment. But I didn't have time for her. Logan and I traveled to Europe, and at every spot, his parents took a picture of us. He didn't give me any of those printed photos, instead making an album for himself. I teased him for being stingy, and he just laughed without denying it. He shared a song called Photograph with me. We keep this love in a photograph, we made these memories for ourselves. He said that those photos would be his to keep. Go take pictures that belong to you. Logan's tone was calm, his expression normal, but I felt really sad. I didn't like it, it felt like he was saying goodbye. The night after we got back, Logan asked me to take a walk by the river. We walked side by side, feeling the cool summer evening breeze. He brought up the time he saved me here. Nancy, do you believe in past lives? I looked up to see his unusually serious eyes. For some reason, I nodded. Logan said he was reborn on New Year's Day. In his last life, I drowned here, and everyone thought I committed suicide. Jackson regretted it deeply, and his parents felt guilty for their partiality back then. Everyone was repenting, including Logan himself. If he had told me everything earlier, maybe I wouldn't have liked Jackson, and I certainly wouldn't have jumped into the river for him. I hugged him, buried my head in his chest, and said softly, "You've already saved me. Thank you, Logan." Logan hugged me back, his arms gradually tightening. He was trembling. I asked him, "When did you die in the past life?" "Nancy." He called me softly, then fell silent. At that moment, I was sure he knew when he would die. Unlike my accident, his illness was not controllable. He saved me, but I could only watch him die. "I'm sorry," I cried out, holding him tightly and not wanting to let go. After a long while, he sighed, "Nancy, you have to live well." Logan passed away in the early morning. His parents said they found him when they went to wake him up. Hearing the news, I was dazed for a long time. Last night we were still walking by the river. I still remember his faint mint scent. Tears kept falling uncontrollably. My mouth was open, but no sound came out. It felt like something was blocking my chest, and I couldn't breathe. I fainted and woke up in a hospital bed. For the first time, my parents showed concern, and Luna looked upset nearby. But I didn't care anymore. At Logan's funeral, Jackson looked like a different person. Dark under his eyes, scruffy beard, the whole person exhausted. When he saw me, his eyes lit up for a moment and then quickly averted them as if realizing something. I ignored him. As long as he didn't provoke me, I wouldn't deal with him. After the funeral, I approached Logan's parents and begged them to send me the photos we had taken before. Instead, they handed me a bank card. The photos had been deleted after printing, with the album burned according to Logan's will. This bank card was the only thing he left me. He didn't want me to remember what he looked like, but how could I forget? I didn't take the card. Logan's parents said I could ask them for help if I ever needed it. I thanked them and left. I couldn't keep my promise to Logan not to like him too much, but I would listen to him and live well. Later, Jackson told me he got into a regular school in Canada. After that, he didn't bother me anymore. After the holidays, I returned to school and focused all my energy on studying. I got a scholarship and applied for an exchange program in the UK. In the second semester of sophomore year, I went to the UK for a one-year exchange study. In my free time, I would go to places where Logan and I had taken photos and take standard tourist photos there. I printed them out and organized them into an album. When I returned to China, I quickly started preparing for my graduate school exams and successfully passed the interview for a university in Switzerland. After finishing my studies abroad, I didn't go back to China but stayed in Switzerland to develop my career. Soon after, my family went bankrupt. My parents moved from the villa to a regular 3-bedroom apartment. Luna graduated but did nothing for more than a month at a time. My parents started subtly reminding me to come home, and I always said I would next time. I sent them living expenses on time every month but never talked to them. Luna asked me for money to buy clothes and bags. She was used to being a rich girl and couldn't adapt to the current downgrade in lifestyle. But I refused and blocked her. My parents couldn't help her anymore. I adopted a cat and a dog. Sometimes I'd take them for a walk while listening to the songs Logan had shared with me. We keep this love in a photograph. We made these memories for ourselves.